Dad turned 72 that day. October sunlight filtered through the living room windows, warming the wood floors and painting golden lines across the old photographs on the mantel. The house smelled like cinnamon and roast chicken, just like it used to when Mom was still around. My brother Daniel had flown in from San Francisco for the occasion, or so he claimed. He wore his usual $1,000 smile, the one that always managed to charm clients and cover lies. He brought Dad a sleek, expensive looking watch in a velvet box and made a show of placing it on his wrist. Dad laughed, eyes crinkling with the same warmth that raised us. I didn't miss the way Daniel kept checking his phone during dinner, though. Something about him felt off. It was a small gathering, just Dad, Daniel, me, and our Aunt Marcy. After Mom died 3 years ago, Dad's birthdays became quieter, more reflective. He'd been slowing down lately, his memory slipping in patches. But he still remembered the big things: birthdays, anniversaries, the exact time Daniel broke his arm falling out of the treehouse when we were kids. Daniel barely touched his food. I noticed he kept glancing at me, his expression unreadable, like he was mentally calculating something. I asked him about his job, his new apartment, his life in the city, and he offered short answers, polite, distant, not brotherly. When the candles were blown out and the dishes cleared, Aunt Marcy left, kissing Dad on the forehead and me on the cheek. I stayed behind to help clean up. Dad had already dozed off in his armchair, the empty wine glass tipping dangerously in his fingers. That's when Daniel cornered me in the hallway. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. "Pack your bags," he said quietly, like he was telling me what time the train was coming. I stared at him, confused. "What? You heard me. Pack your bags. You should be out of here by next week." I laughed, thinking it was some awful attempt at a joke. But he didn't laugh. He didn't even flinch. "This is Dad's house," I said slowly. "Our house. What are you talking about?" His voice dropped, sharper now. "Things are changing. You've been here long enough. You should start figuring out what's next for you." I wanted to scream. My hands trembled at my sides. "You're not making any sense. Dad needs help, someone to be here. He'll be fine." Daniel cut me off. "I've got plans, lawyers, you'll understand eventually." And just like that, he turned and walked away, like he hadn't just set fire to the ground beneath me. I stood in that hallway, the same one we used to race down as kids, where we played hide and seek and chased each other in socks. Now it felt cold, hollow, like someone had stripped the memories from the walls. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. Why now? Why like this? I'd been taking care of Dad for the last 2 years, while Daniel was busy living his high-rise lifestyle and posting filtered sunsets on Instagram. I gave up a lot to be here, my job, my apartment, even my relationship, and now he wanted me gone. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. This wasn't just a selfish power move. It felt calculated, practiced. So I made a decision. The next morning, while Daniel was out, presumably meeting an old friend for brunch, I went online and ordered 3 hidden cameras. Small, discreet, one for the study, one for the kitchen, and one for the living room. I wasn't going anywhere until I knew what was really going on. I spent the next few days carefully installing them. I tucked one inside the old clock in the study, another behind the spice rack, the last one I hid in the bookshelf across from the sofa, nestled between 2 of Dad's unread detective novels. I told myself it wasn't spying if I was protecting Dad and myself. Daniel flew back to San Francisco 2 days later, but something told me this wasn't over. He left too easily, too calmly. That's when I began watching the footage, not obsessively, not yet, but enough to catch anything strange. And I waited for the other shoe to drop, waited for the moment when everything would start to make sense or fall apart. And deep down, part of me already knew this wasn't about a house. It was about betrayal, and it had just begun. The first few days after Daniel left were quiet. Too quiet. Dad's routine stayed the same: early coffee, late crossword puzzles, an occasional walk if his knees felt up to it. He didn't seem to remember the strange exchange between Daniel and me. Or maybe he did and chose not to bring it up. He'd always had a way of pretending things were fine until they weren't. I, on the other hand, couldn't pretend. I was unraveling on the inside. Every morning, I checked the footage from the hidden cameras. It felt wrong at first, invasive even. But I pushed the guilt aside. Something in my gut told me Daniel hadn't come just to give Dad a gift and share a slice of birthday cake. No, he had come with intentions, legal ones, judging by his last words to me. Pack your bags. I played that phrase over and over in my head, each time colder than the last. Daniel had said it like it was final, like he'd already decided my place in this family didn't matter anymore. 4 days after his departure, I caught the first red flag. I was scrubbing the kitchen floor when the audio notification popped up from the bookshelf camera. Motion detected study 2:42 p.m. I dried my hands and opened the app. There was Dad, sitting in his usual spot in the study, and Daniel back already. No call, no message, no heads up. He just appeared like a ghost. I pressed play. "Did you bring the papers?" Daniel asked. His voice was calm, but there was a strange urgency beneath it. From the corner of the frame, a man stepped into view mid-50s, suit slightly wrinkled, leather briefcase in hand. "Right here," the man said, opening the case and pulling out a thick stack of documents. Daniel leaned over the desk, flipping through pages. I heard him sigh in frustration. He has to sign before the end of the month. If he doesn't, we lose the advantage. "Don't worry," the lawyer said. "If he's cooperative, it'll be seamless. And if he's not," Daniel looked toward Dad. My father was staring at the papers like they were written in another language. "What is this again?" Dad asked, blinking. "It's just some stuff for the trust," Daniel said smoothly, placing a pen in his hand. "Remember, we talked about this. You're just signing over some management rights. Nothing changes really. I'll just be helping with decisions. You'll still live here, of course." My chest tightened. Daniel wasn't asking for Dad's help. He was maneuvering him. I watched as my father hesitated, then slowly scratched his name on the bottom of the page. The video ended. I felt like I was choking. My face flushed hot, then ice cold. My hands shook as I rewound it, hoping, praying I misheard something. But no, the footage was clear. Daniel had brought a lawyer into our house behind my back, and somehow, tricked our father into signing something. Something big. My mind spiraled. Had Dad really understood what he was signing? How long had Daniel been planning this? I checked the footage again. A second visit 2 days later. Same study, same lawyer. This time, Daniel was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. "She won't be a problem. She's just stuck. She's got nowhere else to go. Trust me, once the sale's through, she'll have no choice." Sale. That word hit like a hammer. My throat closed as I rewound and transcribed every word. I began piecing together the truth, bit by bit. Daniel had found a way to get Dad to sign partial control of the property over to him. He was preparing to sell the house, our house. He had no intention of discussing it with me. And most importantly, he was relying on Dad's fading memory to make it all happen. It wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation. I stared at the walls around me. These weren't just bricks and wood. They were memories. Mom teaching me how to make French toast in the kitchen. Dad showing me how to tie a fishing knot in the garage. The night Daniel and I built a blanket fort and fell asleep to the hum of the rain. This house held our entire childhood. And now he wanted to sell it, to erase me like I never existed. I wanted to confront him, call him, scream at him, but that would blow everything. So instead, I dug deeper. I went into Dad's file cabinet, the old locked one he hadn't touched in years. I found the house deed, the original trust documents, compared them to screenshots from the footage. And there it was, a clear change in the trust structure. Daniel had transferred himself as the acting trustee with power of sale. He'd used some vague medical notes about Dad's early-stage cognitive decline to justify it. That's when the grief turned to fire. He was painting Dad as incompetent, just enough to get control, but not enough for it to look suspicious. Not enough for me to stop it. But I wasn't going to let him get away with this. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't naive. And I certainly wasn't leaving. So I started making calls. Quiet ones. I found a lawyer. One who specialized in elder exploitation and trust fraud. I sent her the footage, the forged documents, Dad's medical records all still inconclusive, all still highly debatable in court. I kept quiet. I smiled when Daniel called and said, "Just checking in, how's Dad?" Like he hadn't already begun trying to rip our lives apart. He thought he was winning. He thought I was just a sentimental fool standing in the way of his money. What he didn't know was that I was recording everything, every lie, every signature, every whisper behind closed doors. And I was going to let him dig his grave, one signature at a time. I always believed revenge was loud, the kind of thing shouted from rooftops or slammed into doors. But now I knew better. Revenge wasn't rage, it was restraint. It was the patient collection of broken pieces, silently sharpening each one until you had a weapon no one saw coming. The morning after I found the altered trust documents, I booked an appointment with Eleanor Linwood, a probate attorney known for dealing with family fraud cases. Her office was small, but smelled like strength, wood polish, fresh paper, and coffee that had steeped a little too long. Her eyes didn't blink once while I told her the story, the hidden cameras, the signatures, the diagnosis that wasn't really a diagnosis. She tapped her pen once, looked up and said, "You've got him," but I didn't feel victorious, not yet. It wasn't just about catching Daniel anymore. It was about stopping him before he took everything, not just from me, but from Dad. Because if Daniel got away with this, my father would lose more than a house. He'd lose the final years of his life to a lie. We built our case in silence. I started logging everything, every phone call, every unannounced visit, every moment Dad hesitated remembering the date. I recorded when he remembered things too, like how he still knew Mom's recipe for her lemon cake, or that our cat's name had been Smokey, not Shadow. He wasn't gone, not even close, but Daniel was using his occasional forgetfulness like a scalpel, carefully, selectively, cruelly. It made me sick. Meanwhile, Daniel kept his distance. He called every few days, always polite, always too polished. He'd ask how Dad was, if he was sleeping well, if we needed anything, all while nudging that question back into the conversation. "So, have you thought about your next step? You still looking at places? I'd stopped replying directly weeks ago. Just vague answers like still figuring things out. And Dad likes the quiet here. But every time I hung up, I could feel him inching closer. His plan wasn't finished. He thought I was stalling, thought I was too sentimental to fight. Good, let him think I was weak. I waited 3 more weeks before setting the trap. It was subtle. A text message to Daniel. "Dad wants to have dinner with both of us. He's been asking about you. You free next Friday?" He replied instantly. "Of course, tell him I'll bring dessert." I smiled to myself. Perfect. I spent the next few days making sure everything was in place. Eleanor helped prepare a cease and desist document regarding further legal transactions involving the property. She also arranged for a court-appointed psychologist to discreetly visit Dad under the guise of a wellness check. The results were promising: mild age-related memory loss, no significant impairment, capable of informed consent. It was all I needed. Friday came. I cleaned the house top to bottom, set the table, cooked Dad's favorite roast beef, buttery mashed potatoes, and green beans sautéed with garlic. I wanted everything to feel normal, like this was just another family meal. But every second ticked louder than the last. I kept glancing toward the bookshelf camera, recording, always recording. Daniel arrived on time, casual as ever. "Expensive coat, fake warmth, smells like home," he said, kissing Dad on the cheek. "Good to see you, son." Dad said, though he looked a little uncertain, like Daniel, was a face from a dream he was trying to place. Dinner started simple. Weather, news, the usual small talk. I waited until the plates were cleared and the wine was poured before I brought out the laptop. "I want to show you both something," I said calmly. Daniel tensed but tried to play it off. "What is it?" I clicked on a video file. The study, the lawyer, Daniel handing Dad the pen. Dad's brow furrowed. His hand went to his mouth. What is this?" Daniel's smile dropped like a stone. "I can explain. You'll get the chance," I said, cutting him off. I clicked to the next file, the second meeting, the words once the sale's through. "She'll have no choice." Daniel stood up. "You had cameras. You've been spying on us." "No," I said softly, meeting his eyes. "I was protecting Dad from you." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me, like the sibling he used to push on the swing had turned into a stranger. "You're insane," he spat. "None of this holds in court. You can't, actually." I interrupted again, sliding a folder across the table. "It does." He opened it. "Legal paperwork, psychological evaluation, cease and desist orders, preliminary fraud complaints, everything signed, stamped, and prepared." I could see it in his eyes, the exact moment he realized he'd lost, the flicker of panic behind his mask. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," he said, trying one last angle. "I was just trying to help, to make sure everything was handled responsibly." "You mean profitably?" I replied. Daniel scoffed. "You think Dad even knows what's going on half the time?" Dad looked up then, quiet until now. "I know enough," he said. His voice was hoarse, but it landed like thunder. "I know my son tried to trick me." Daniel went pale. I could have screamed at him. I could have thrown a glass or every hurt memory I had like knives across the room. But instead, I stood. "This house isn't yours to take," I said, "and I'm not going anywhere." I opened the front door. The lawyer Elinor had sent was waiting outside with a court processor. Daniel was served in silence. He didn't fight, not this time. Maybe he realized how far gone his plan was. Or maybe he saw in my face that I wasn't going to break the way he thought. He left without another word. The door closed behind him with a sound I'd never forget, not a slam, not a bang. Just an end. Dad reached for my hand. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I will be." So would I. For a long moment after Daniel left, the house was still. No wind outside, no creaking floorboards, no sound except the old clock ticking in the hallway, a sound I hadn't noticed in years. Dad sat quietly at the table, eyes lowered, the folder of evidence still open in front of him. The air smelled of dinner grown cold, but neither of us had the appetite to finish it. I wanted to ask him a dozen questions. Do you feel betrayed? Do you remember signing the papers? Did you know what he was planning? But I didn't ask. I just sat beside him and waited. After a few minutes, he spoke, his voice rough like dry leaves. I didn't want to believe it, my own son. I reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. He thought you wouldn't notice. I said, that you just sign and forget, that I wouldn't fight back. Dad gave me a tired smile, more sad than anything. You did more than fight back. You stood up for this house, for me. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time, pride, maybe. Or peace, maybe both. We spent the rest of that night cleaning up. I wrapped the leftovers, washed the dishes, and helped Dad into his recliner. He asked if I'd sit with him for a while, like we used to when I was a kid. So I did. We watched old reruns until he fell asleep, his breath slow and even. I stayed up long after, scrolling through my phone expecting a text from Daniel, but there was nothing. No apology, no explanation. Just silence, the kind that feels heavy and final. The next morning, Elinor called. Preliminary injunctions in motion, she said. He can't sell, transfer, or modify anything until we go to court. I let out a long breath. Thank you, I said, truly. Don't thank me, she replied. You did the hard part. You loved your father enough to protect him, even when it meant going to war with your own blood. That line stuck with me. We always talk about love as something soft, gentle, forgiving. But sometimes love is hard. Love is boundaries. Love is knowing when to say, no, not this time, not like this. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and preparation. Daniel's attorney tried to negotiate a quiet settlement. We refused. I wasn't after money. I was after truth. And I wanted it said, out loud and on record, that what Daniel had done wasn't just selfish. It was exploitation. A betrayal of the most intimate kind, the kind that cuts deeper than lies or distance or time. When the court hearing came, Dad was there beside me. He wore his best suit, the same one from Mom's funeral. His hands shook a little, but his eyes were clear. When the judge asked if he understood what had been done to him, he nodded and said, I do now, and I won't let it happen again. Daniel avoided looking at either of us the entire time. The ruling was in our favor, full restoration of Dad's control over the trust, Daniel stripped of all power regarding the estate. The documents he had tricked Dad into signing were declared invalid, procured under misrepresentation, and diminished capacity. And the footage? Admissible, clear, damning. We walked out of the courthouse into the sharp October air, almost exactly a year since the birthday that had started it all. Dad turned to me and said, "I'm proud of you, you know." I blinked, caught off guard by the weight of it. "You stood your ground," he added, "even when I couldn't." There was a lump in my throat. I didn't speak. I just hugged him long, tight, the way he used to hug us when we were little and scared of thunderstorms. We drove home in silence, but it was a good silence, a healed one. Daniel never called after that. I sometimes wonder if he regrets it, if he watches the house from afar, or drives by just to see if we're still here. Maybe he tells himself a version of the story where he was right, where I was the one in the way. Let him. I'm not here to change his narrative. I'm here to live mine. Dad's health isn't perfect, but he's happy. He laughs more now. He paints again, even if his hands can't quite stay steady. Sometimes he asks where Daniel is, and I just say, somewhere far away. He nods, and we move on. As for the cameras, I took them down last week. Not because I stopped being cautious, but because I finally felt safe. Because the war was over. Because sometimes revenge isn't slamming a door or ruining someone's life. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply being the one who stayed, the one who protected, the one who loved and was right too.